Hi, welcome to Movies Moment. Today we are going to explain a movie called Wrong Turn. Spoilers ahead. Subscribe if you like this and catch us on the next one. Take care.
The movie begins with Scott is driving through a town and stops at the police station. A police officer becomes curious about a photo of a girl on Scott's phone and remarks on her beauty. However, things take a turn when the officer sees a picture of the girl with a black man and asks for the man's identity. Scott identifies him as his daughter's boyfriend, Darius Clemens, and mentions her plan to hike the Appalachian Trail with friends. Scott is concerned because his daughter hasn't been in touch as promised, so he seeks help from the police. Despite the officer's discouragement and suggestion that she may have run off, Scott insists that his daughter is responsible and would keep her word. The officer instructs him to complete a missing person form. Later, Scott goes to a nearby hotel called the Wrenhouse Inn and inquires about his daughter. The front desk attendant informs him that the group left early that morning and promises to contact him if she learns anything. Anxious and determined, Scott searches the town and visits a bar to inquire about his daughter. The bartender hasn't seen her, but just as Scott is about to leave, a stranger approaches him. Scott shows the man a photo of his daughter and explains their plans. The man admits to having seen them, but advises Scott against searching further, calling it a hopeless endeavor. However, Scott refuses to give up. In a flashback to 6 weeks earlier, Jennifer and her friends embark on a road trip to Virginia. They enjoy the journey, with one friend taking pictures while Jennifer is anxious. Jennifer's boyfriend, Darius, calms her down. While driving, they experience a flat tire, and Jennifer impressively changes it herself. Awkward conversations arise among the friends, but they quickly move on. Meanwhile, someone seems to be watching them from the woods. Upon arriving in a quiet town, they check into a hotel and later have fun at a bar. They engage in a discussion about prejudice and judgment in the town. An encounter with a local man turns heated when Adam makes a disrespectful comment. Jennifer stands up to him, noting his potential health issues. The man eventually leaves, warning them to stay safe. As they leave the bar, they discover someone near their car, but the person disappears. Jennifer calls her father to update him on their trail plans. In their hotel room, Jennifer and Darius share a moment discussing their reasons for working at a nonprofit agency. The next morning, Jennifer interacts with a local woman making bracelets but encounters an elusive child. Back at the hotel, they await two friends, Luis and Gary, and cheer when they arrive. They begin their hike on the Appalachian Trail, capturing their adventure on video and enjoying the natural beauty around them. Later on, Darius expresses his desire to find a Civil War fort in the area, despite Jen's reminder to stick to the trail. He argues that the trail won't lead them to the waterfall, cliff, or fort he wants to see. Eventually, Jen agrees to explore a different trail. As they venture into various trails, they walk for hours, and the group starts to complain. Darius suggests returning to the Appalachian Trail when they spot movement above them. They witness a massive log rolling down their way. Panic ensues as they scramble downhill to avoid the log. In the chaos, they trip and collide with trees. Tragically, Gary is struck by the log and pinned against a tree. Milla and Adam survive the terrifying incident, but Milla blames Adam for leaving her. Adam explains that he was also frightened but comforts Milla, promising it won't happen again. Darius, after checking on Jen, realizes his finger is broken. They search for Gary and Luis and find Luis near the pin log, staring at the gruesome scene. Gary has been fatally crushed. A sense of shock and panic sets in, and they decide to call for help. However, Milla's phone is missing, and tensions rise as they argue and blame each other. Eventually, they agree to leave Gary's body and descend the mountain. They continue walking, getting lost, and eventually deciding to set up a tent as night falls and rain begins. Luis becomes distressed, wanting to return to Gary's body, but Adam reassures him that it's just a lifeless body. They clean up as best as they can and huddle together in the tent for the night. In the middle of the night, Jen wakes up to thunder and notices something outside the tent, but dismisses it. The next morning, they realize they've been sleeping in a graveyard. Darius goes to investigate and discovers tomb inscriptions related to the foundation. They realize their phones are missing, and Jen mentions seeing someone near their tent the previous night. Adam, panicked, searches for Milla and calls out for help. Jen, Darius, and Luis follow him, descending further into the woods. During their search, they encounter Ruthie, a girl from the town. Adam and Jen try to approach her, but she runs away. Adam follows her and ends up chained to a tree. Jen stays with him briefly before signaling Ruthie to run. Darius follows the girl, and Luis and Jin try to free Adam. Unfortunately, Adam is suddenly dragged into a hole, and Darius tries unsuccessfully to reach him. Jin insists they should go for help as it may take time to find Adam. They mark their location with a shirt tied to a branch and leave. They come across a cottage filled with bags, cell phones, clothes, and hiking gear. While inside, they spot two men in skull and camouflage clothing holding someone tied to a branch. Darius threatens the men with a weapon, but they can't communicate due to language differences. In the chaos, Adam, thought to be dead, attacks one of the men, killing him. The group argues over Adam's actions and tensions rise. They decide not to involve the police. As they leave the woods, Jin continues to criticize Adam, causing tension between her and Mila. Suddenly, someone starts following them, and they realize they are being pursued by multiple disguised men. Adam and Mila head in one direction while Jin and Darius go another. Mila falls into a pit of spikes and pleads for Adam's help. Adam leaves to seek assistance, and Mila is killed by one of the disguised men with a bow and arrow. Jin and Darius try to hide but are pursued and eventually captured. Darius is pulled away, leaving Jin alone and frightened as she is struck on the head. In a dark pit, Jin shouts for help and demands to see her friends. A woman offers her food and water but instructs her to be quiet. Jin continues to call for her friends, prompting the woman to leave her in darkness. Jin wakes up later, provided with food, water, and a ladder to climb out of the pit. She reunites with her friends, and they are all blindfolded and led through a community hidden within the mountains. There, they are forced to kneel before a group called the Foundation. The Foundation accuses Jin and her friends of murdering one of their members and questions them about the incident. Adam is accused of killing the man, and Ruthie points him out as the culprit. They are found guilty, and despite Jin's attempt to defend Adam, he is sentenced to death by having his head struck as he had done to the deceased Foundation member. Luis, Darius, and Jin face a gruesome fate as well. Luis is blinded by having his eyes punctured with a burning metal rod and is pushed into a cave. Darius is next, but Jin intervenes, offering her skills and herself to the community. They are spared from blindness and become members of the community. Jin and Darius have a moment to talk but are interrupted when the leader forces Jin to sleep with him. Meanwhile, back at home, Jin's father, Scott, is worried and tries to contact her, but to no avail. In the present day, Scott is in a bar when the hotel lady informs him about the community in the mountains. Afterward, Scott is attacked by a group of men, and the police ignore his plight. Scott decides to search for his daughter and receives help from the hotel lady. They embark on a hike together, encountering traps along the way. Tragedy strikes as the hotel lady and her son are killed by a trap, and Scott continues on alone. He eventually reaches the Foundation and is captured. Darius points a gun at him, signaling him to stay away from Jin and their friends. However, Jin appears with the leader, claiming she is the leader's wife and not Scott's daughter. Scott is thrown into a pit. In the leader's house, Jin sleeps with him as part of the community's rule. She and her father later plan to escape, and she rescues him from the pit. They search for Darius, but find he is unwilling to leave. Ruthie guides them through a cave filled with blind people, and Jin reluctantly kills Luis before reaching a cliff. As they cautiously navigate the cliff, Jin is attacked by a woman, and they engage in a deadly struggle. Jin accidentally stabs the woman and started to walk out of the dark place. Her father, on the other hand, also searches for her. He went down to look for Jin. As Jin walks, a man speaks and attacks her. It was the man who has been watching them since they arrived in the town. He wants Jin to himself, but Jin reaches the man's knife and stabs him many times. In a tense escape, Scott searches for Jin using a flashlight in the rocky terrain and eventually shoots the woman Jin had earlier stabbed. He finds Jin engaged in a struggle with another man, whom she stabs. After a brief rest, they are discovered by another skull-masked man, but Jin and Scott manage to fend him off. Uncertain of which way to go, they are illuminated by lights behind them, revealing the man who had beaten Scott earlier. He explains that he beat Scott to help him reach the mountains, doing what Jin and her friends had suggested about his eyes. He also expresses his resentment toward the Foundation. While making their way toward the man, Jin is unexpectedly stabbed in the legs by a flying knife, killing one of their rescuers. They spot the assailant and Scott kills him with an axe. He carries Jin toward the rescuer's location. As they flee, Jennifer hears her husband's voice calling out to her. The rescuers and Jennifer and Scott finally exit the woods, refusing the man's offer of a drink due to exhaustion. Weeks later, Jennifer visits her father's workplace and gives him some information about a construction project. Returning home, she finds her stepmother entertaining visitors, the leader of the foundation and Ruthie, introduced as their new neighbors. Jennifer, suspicious and pregnant, confronts the leader but ultimately refrains from harming him. He promises not to harm her family, and she leaves with him and Ruthie. As they drive away from Jennifer's town in a trailer with other members of the Foundation, disguised as ordinary people, they are involved in a car crash. Jennifer brutally stabs two men who exit the trailer, and she and Ruthie continue on foot.